Sir,
Hello.
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 Vagesh sir.
Yes, yes. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
And the video is perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yes. So, shall we start?
Yeah, we can
First, I
start.
will I will introduce myself and our university. Then yours research, and then we will go to your presentations on
Yeah,
this
okay.
today's topics. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Good evening, all of you. My name is Dr. Jaimin Rai, Assistant Professor, Department of Physics, Uka Tarsadia University, Bardoli. We all welcome you on this evening, a webinar on a very renowned and interesting topic, that is a mass loss from the sun, and they're delivered by the Dr. Vagesh Mishra from the Max Planck Institute of Solar Energy from the Germany. So, uh, before going to introduce him, we'll introduce our department. We have Department of Physics, and we have two courses: integrated MSc Physics 5 years course and MSc Physics 5 years 2 years course. In that, these two course, in one of our integrated course, we have an astrophysics as a subject, and we will majorly focus on the astronomy and astrophysics, measurements, different measurements of the space, different measurements of the inner and outer atmosphere of the Earth, detectors to visualize the astronomical objects, and all that. So, in that regard, of this students' benefit, we have organized this topic: nearest star of the Earth, that is the Sun. So, to know about the Sun, and the most important thing, its mass. So we have our guest speaker, Dr. Vagesh Mishra. He is basically from the Aurangabad, and he done his PhD from Physical Research Laboratory, that is PRL, at Ahmedabad. And after their PhD, he moved to the China for the postdoctoral fellowship, that is at the University of Science and Technology of China. And then he moved further to the Max Planck Institute for Solar System Research at Germany. He has published several articles and reputed international journals, and also he had made several presentations at the national and international conference. His basic research interest is on sun, CMEs, heliosphere, space feathers, and etc. So this is our detail about the speaker, Dr. Vagesh Mishra. Now I'll hand over to the Dr. Vagesh Mishra. Sir,
Hello.
sir.
So, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So, first of all, I wish and hope that everyone who is watching live are very safe, healthy during this unfortunate time of COVID-19. And I am also happy that UK Tasadia University is making commendable efforts to conduct webinars on different topics by eminent scientists and experts. In fact, I feel proud and privileged to get an opportunity to give a webinar on the topic of my research interest. I thank Dr. Jamin Ray for inviting me and moderating this presentation. Basically, in this presentation, I will talk about the mass loss from the sun. We all know that sun has gathered attention of several civilizations around the globe since I can say middle Neolithic periods. This is because people realized from their daily experience that without the sun there will be no light, warmth, life, and change in the season or measurement of time. But currently, in the present era, with the progress made in the field and astrophysics, it is now understood that sun is a normal star, as other stars seen in the night sky. Contrary to other stars, the sun is the nearest star. So we can study the sun with very fine spatial and temporal resolution. Therefore, it is possible to study the sun and various processes in the sun in very much details. Further, we can test several theory of plasma physics, stellar evolution, and structures by studying the sun, which is like a plasma laboratory. Therefore, studying the sun is important from the astrophysical perspective as well in general. So I will go to the slide presentation to start with, sir. So the topic of my presentation today is the mass loss from the sun. So basically, I will discuss about the coronal mass ejections and solar wind. During the lecture, as it progresses, I will describe further details of this. The outline of my talk is as follows. Since I am informed that most of the audience of the university would be of undergraduate and postgraduate level, I would keep the talks at very general level. So starting from the basics of the sun and the mass loss processes like nuclear fusions and solar activity, I will discuss how this mass loss affects the star itself and any human or civilization or technology on the earth. So to start with, we can see that sun is the central star in our solar system. And we can see that there are various planets around this central star, which it hosts. Not all the planets are of similar in nature. Some are the rocky terrestrial planets, which are very near the sun, and then there are gas giant planets in the outer solar system. Not all the planets have water. Like if we give an example, Venus is too hot near the sun and it does not have any water, while the Mars, little away from the earth, little farther from the earth, have only the ice, like ice form of water. So we can see that the water in our solar system are even on the earth, which we have today. It is understood that it is generally came from the comets, which was gravitationally attracted by Jupiter and Neptune, and then the water is formed. So we can see that if we see here that Earth is in the habitable zone of the sun. And if we describe the habitable zone, it is the range of orbits around a star within which a planetary in which a planet can have liquid water under a given sufficient atmospheric pressure. So around every star there is a certain range only where the water can exist. If we see in this case of Earth, if it is too near the sun, it is hard to sustain water. It can evaporate due to the radiation from the sun. And then if it is little away, then again it would be too cold to sustain. It would, like, water would not be in the form of liquid. So we can see that understanding the habitable zone around any star is very important. Considering the importance of water in Earth's biosphere, several studies have been conducted in the past and in the recent. People are trying to understand the habitable zone of other stars in our galaxy. And in fact, several planets outside our solar system has also been found, which have the masses similar to our Earth. And much exploration is being done to understand if they can sustain water and which form of gases they have. So there are various planetary exploration being conducted even in our solar system. So if we see the sun in our galaxy, we can see that it is located around 25,000 light years away from the center of the galaxy, which is around 2/3 way out of the galaxy core. And astronomers think that most of the stars in our galaxy could have planets orbiting around them. And such planets, as I described before, are called extrasolar planets. And it is very important to discover the planets, extrasolar planets. If we see here the Milky Way in the left side of the image, this is another galaxy which is similar to our spiral galaxy. And the Milky Way which we see is like band of light and dust stretches across the dark night sky. Some people might have seen this from the Earth. So as we saw in this, that there are many stars in our galaxy. So to study the stars in astrophysics, we need to first classify different type of stars. As the different stars may have different mass, different radiation coming from them, they may have different age of their life during their evolution. So the classification of the sun is called G2V star. So sun is a G2V type star. So this G2 is actually the spectral classification. If we see in this image on the x-axis, the stars from very hot to very cool are classified from O to M, while the radiation or luminosity from the stars are indexed in the absolute magnitude from in this figure from 20 to -10. So if we see here the sun in this image, it is just at the point of G2V. Such classification of a star based on the temperature and luminosity is called spectral classification of a star. And this is basically done by when the star light is passed through diffraction grating or prism, they split it into red to in a rainbow of colors with interspersed spectral lines. The intensity and width of the lines are used to understand the temperature and density of the star. So what we can see from here is the sun is a very normal star. It's neither very hot, neither very cool, neither very big, neither very small. So it is just a normal star, but it is of very much importance because it is the nearest star to us. So how the stars are formed? To give a brief introduction, any stars in our Milky Way galaxy or even beyond the Milky Way is formed from the gravitational collapse of the molecular cloud. Once the gravitational collapse of molecular cloud happens, at the core of the cloud, due to the gravitational collapse, enough energy is generated, and then stars slightly illuminates, and that stage is called protostar. Due to further gravitational collapse, the sufficient pressure and temperature is formed at the core of the star, where the hydrogen starts fusing into helium. The nuclear fusion starts at the core of the star, and then such stars which are able to convert their hydrogen into helium via nuclear fusion are called the main sequence star. Once the main sequence star uses its all fuel of hydrogen to helium, it can form, if the star is very heavy, so the fate of a star, the journey of a star is decided by its mass. If we see, like if the star is lighter as the sun, like of the same order of the mass as the sun, it can go to red giant phase. And if the star is very heavy, it can go to white dwarf, it can go to neutron star or black hole. So what exactly happens? In the case of our sun, if we see, which is currently in the main sequence stage, in the future, as in the core, most of the hydrogen is converted into the form of helium, the nuclear fusion of hydrogen would start at the outer spherical shell of the sun, and at the core there would be more helium. So in this process, the outer layer of the sun would expelled into the form of planetary nebula, and it can engulf most of our solar system planet. And the core of the sun would remain as a white dwarf. But if any star is more heavier than the sun, then the conversion of helium to other heavier elements, then other heavier elements to more heavier elements would continue, and then the star would explode in the form of supernova to form a black hole or neutron star. So if we see here our daytime star, some general properties, what we see that sun is around 150 million kilometers away from the earth. So if a light travels from the sun, it reaches to earth in around 8 minutes. And if we see the mass, it is around 109 times of the mass of the earth. So the diameter of the sun is too big. And if we see the mass of the sun, it is quite large. It is So what we see that sun is too big, and most of the studies has confirmed that our sun was formed from a large cloud of molecular gas around 5 billion years ago. So exactly, if we all know that black body radiation can be used to understand the temperature of any object. Suppose we want to know the temperature of the sun, and if we plot the wavelength and the intensity curve for the light coming from the sun, the peak intensity would correspond to some wavelength depending on the temperature. So if we use the in thermodynamics, we all have studied the Wien's displacement law. So in that, if the temperature of an object is higher, the intensity at which the maximum intensity would lie at the lower wavelength. So similarly, here we can see that the most of the light in the sun corresponds to yellow range, yellow light. So if we calculate this intensity wavelength, we can calculate the temperature, and the temperature of the sun's surface is found to be around 5,000 Kelvin. So this would be the temperature of the solar surface. But as we know that even for the Earth, different layers of the Earth's atmosphere have different temperature. Like the lower atmosphere of the Earth have troposphere, then we have stratosphere, then mesosphere, then thermosphere. And if we see on the y-axis, this is the altitude, and on the x-axis of this figure, we have temperature. So we can see that as we go higher in the altitude, the temperature even in the Earth's atmosphere changes. Similarly, in the case of sun, if we see here, this is the structure of the sun, and we can see that there are various layers in this. The innermost layer is called the core. Then we have the radiation zone. In the core of the sun, actually nuclear fusion makes hydrogen to convert into helium, and radiation in the form of gamma ray is emitted. That energy continued in the form of radiation in the radiation zone. Then we have the convection zone. If we see here, then we have convection zone. And after that, we have the photosphere. This is the outer disk of the sun, which we exactly see. And most of the light we see is from the photosphere. So the thermodynamic, as in the previous slide, we calculated the temperature of the sun around 5,000 Kelvin. That is the temperature of the photosphere. And then after photosphere, we have chromosphere, another thin layer of the sun, and the outermost layer of the sun is called corona. So if we see the temperature profile for this different layer here, we can see that as we go little away from the photosphere, we can see that temperature with height, the temperature first drops, and then in the chromosphere, temperature slightly rises. Then at the transition region, the temperature sudden rises, and in the corona, it further rises, and almost exponentially it's increasing. So from here, what we can see that since most of the energy in the sun is created at the core, so if we go away from the core, the temperature should decrease. But here in the corona or in the transition region, the temperature is increasing. So it means that it seems to be violating the second law of thermodynamics, which says that heat cannot flow from low temperature to high temperature. It should always go from high temperature to cool temperature. But in the case of sun, sudden temperature rises in the chromosphere and corona, and this has been explained. This problem was called coronal heating problem, and there were various theories given. So the two possible solutions are like nanoflares, which actually hits the corona, and then we have Alfvén wave turbulence. Random put point motions causes Alfvén waves to propagate along coronal loops, and that seems to hit the corona. So to go much into detail of the nuclear fusion, which is happening at the core of the sun, in this process, actually 4 hydrogen fuses into, if you see this chain reaction, so This tells that 4 hydrogen is converted into the form of helium, and in this process, lot of gamma photons are emitted. It has been studied that in the process of hydrogen to helium formation, around 0.7% of the mass get lost in the form of radiation. And if we convert this mass loss into the form of energy from the Einstein mass energy equivalence, we can know the total radiation coming from the sun. So to calculate here, I have done basic calculation. So if we see here, the total energy emitted by the sun is around 4 into 10 to the 33 erg per second. This is the total energy coming from the sun. So if we assume that this all energy is coming from this conversion of mass into energy, we can calculate the total mass, and then we find that around 4 million tons of mass is lost each second to get this much energy. And if we calculate that if we assume that such rate of nuclear fusion is since the time sun is born, and the total lifetime of sun is around 5 billion years, 5 into 10 to the 9 years. So if we take this mass loss per second to the entire age of the sun, we find and calculate the total mass, we find that this mass 6.8 into 10 to the power 29 gram. This seems to be too much. But if we compare, as I have shown in the previous slide, the sun is too heavy. And if we compare this mass loss even during the entire cycle, entire journey, entire age of the sun, even then this mass loss is just 0.03% of its current mass. And it means that we are not running out of fuel. So sun would still be shining for the next 5 billion years, as it is known that sun is in the middle age of its journey, middle age at its evolutionary journey. So the sun would be keep shining. So there is no problem. But this is the one process in the sun, nuclear fusion, which is the one process by which the mass loss is taking place in the sun. But this is not the only mass loss process. There are other mass loss process that is called continuous solar wind. So from the sun, there is always plasma particles like electron, proton, and other elements coming away from the corona. They are always evaporating from the corona. And the evidence of such solar wind is always has been seen in the form of comet tails. As we can see that if a comet goes in this journey, like there are formation of gas and dust tails, and this is due to the sun's radiation pressure and the solar wind pressure. So there has been many studies, like one famous study has been made by Ulysses, which went around the sun in the polar orbit, and it measures the solar wind speed all at the different latitudes. And we can see that in the equatorial region, if we see the top right panel of the figure, we can see that in the equatorial region of the sun, the solar wind particles have less speed, but at the polar region, at the higher latitude, the solar wind have very high speed. And such solar winds, which is always coming from the sun, is another source of mass loss. And these solar wind particles, when reach to Earth's atmosphere, they create the aurora, the colorful light, as we can see in the top, in the bottom right panel. Then the another mass loss process is the episodic coronal mass ejections. So from the sun, there are times when the huge magnetized plasma from the sun get detached and move away from the sun. And if we see here, there are various images taken. The first image of coronal mass ejection was taken in 1970 by the OSO-7 orbiting solar observatory of the NASA mission. Then we have series of missions studying the coronal mass ejection. And we can see that with the recent improvement in technology, we have improved our ability to capture the fine resolution of this coronal mass ejection. So one example we can see here in this movie, how from the sun a huge mass is being detached and then it moves with certain speed in the heliosphere. It is found that most of such coronal mass ejections from the sun is associated with a solar flare. And what is solar flare? If we see, solar flare is the sudden flash of increased brightness on the sun, usually observed near its surface, and it is in the close proximity to a sunspot group. We can see in this figure there is sudden increase in the light, and such increase in light is called solar flare. And this is seen in all the wavelength. If you see this panel, right panel, we can see that this sudden flash can be seen in many wavelengths. And this sudden flash is often associated with coronal mass ejection. With this process, a huge mass is expelled from the sun. If if we observe coronal mass ejection in white light images, they appear like this. And and most of the coronal mass ejection is observed from the coronagraph. A coronagraph is an instrument which occurs the bright photosphere of the sun and then observes the faint corona. Such occultation of solar photosphere happens during the total solar eclipse naturally, but we have designed the way to artificially occult the solar photosphere and observe the outer corona, and we can see that any mass coming from the sun would appear as a bright feature. If the coronagraphs are, if such mass ejections are coming in the line of, suppose we have a coronograph at the Earth and we are observing the solar photo, we have occulted the solar photosphere from Earth and we are observing the corona. If the CME is heading towards the Earth along the Sun-Earth line, then any coronagraph located at near the Earth would look this CME as a full halo, like bright halo structure around the sun. If it is in different direction away from the Sun-Earth line, it may appear as a limb CME. So most of the studies have focused on studying this mass evolution from the sun. So what we see that there are three ways to, so we found that there are three ways of mass loss process. One is the nuclear fusion, then we have the coronal mass ejections, and then we have continuous solar wind. As I described that most of such CME, mass loss via CME, takes place from the region of sunspots. So what are the sunspots? If we observe the photosphere, the sunspots appear as black spots on the photospheric disk. The number of the sunspots on the photosphere varies. At some point, at some time, there are more number of sunspots on the sun, and we say that when there are maximum number of sunspots on the photospheric disk, we term that phase as a solar maximum. And when there are almost no sunspots or very little sunspots on the sun, we say it's solar minimum. So if we plot and if we see these sunspots in high resolution, like here, we can see that this dark sunspots in fact have other features. That is, the darkest at the center is called umbra. Then we have the outer periphery of the sunspots called penumbra. So we can see that the temperature of the sunspots is less than the temperature of the photospheric disk, where we have a granule structure. And such sunspots are found to last for many days to several weeks. And the magnetic field in these sunspots are very high. If we see, the peak value can go from 2000 to 3000 Gauss. And these are the region on the sun from where many CMEs can happen. So if we plot the number of sunspots with time, we can see that at some point the sunspots number are more, then it's gradually decreases. Then we have again rise in the sunspots number. So at one time we have maximum number of sunspots, and then after around 11 years we can see in this plot that again we have maximum number of sunspots on the sun. So the time gap between these two maximum number of sunspots is called the cycle, And we can see that from cycle 21 around 1980 to another cycle peak 22. Cycle 22 peak up happens around 1990. So there is a 10 to 11 year cycle. So this 11-year cycle of the sunspots are called solar cycle. As I described before, that most of the CME, coronal mass ejections from the sun, are associated, are located, are coming from the same region of the sunspots. It means that the number of CME would also be large when the sun is in the maximum of its phase, like when the sun has more sunspots number. The sunspots on the solar disk are always located in the latitude of plus 30 to minus 30. And as the time progresses, the sunspots drifts from higher latitude to lower latitude. If we see in the top panel, we can see that in the beginning of the cycle, sunspots form at a higher latitude, around plus 30 to minus 30. And as the cycle progresses, the sunspots drifts towards lower latitude. And if we plot this drifting of sunspots, it appears as a butterfly diagram. So how these sunspots form? It is very important to understand this, because most of the mass loss from the CME come from this sunspots region. So we know that magnetic field in the sun is created by a dynamo. So this solar dynamo works like we know that sun has a differential rotation. So different latitude of the sun have different rotation speed. Like the equator rotates faster, but the pole, as we go towards pole, the rotation speed is slower. The equator of the sun completes one rotation in 27 days, while as we go towards pole, it can reach up to 37. So we can see that due to the differential rotation, the magnetic field below the surface gets coiled up, and this coiling up continues and continues, and then due to coiling up of the magnetic field, a kink develops, and that kink breaks out of the photosphere surface. If we see in more high resolution, we can see that this kinked magnetic field breaks through the photosphere and goes in the upper layer of the sun. So the point from where this magnetic field lines breaks the photosphere, there actually convection gets slowed down, and in this process that region becomes cooler, but the magnetic field in that region becomes higher. So if we see the solar cycle from minima to maxima, we can see here that at one point the sun had no sunspots, and the region above the sunspots, if we see in the higher layer like chromosphere, they appear bright in the H alpha. So if we see the kinematics and statistics of the coronal mass ejection, we can see that most of the coronal mass ejection coming from the sun have a speed of around 500 to thousands, although it can range from very slow coronal mass ejection to very high coronal mass ejections. And if we see the statistics, coronal mass ejection can occur 2 to 3 per week to 5 to 6 per day. So depending on the different phase of solar cycle, the number of CME per day can change. So as I described that other than the nuclear fusion, the two other processes of mass loss are coronal mass ejection CME and the solar wind. So it is very important to know how much mass loss can happen due to coronal mass ejection. In our one recent study, we considered all the CMEs from the sun and calculated the mass loss. So if we see here, we studied for the two solar cycle from 1996 to 2016, around 20 years. And we can see that as the solar, so the first peak is called the solar cycle 23, and the second peak in this plot is solar cycle 24. So what we found that if we considered all the CME in the latitude range of minus 30 to plus 30, the mass loss is shown in the left panel of the figure. But if we consider all the CME from the sun irrespective of the latitude, from the complete sun minus 90 to plus 90, the mass loss increases slightly. So it means that, and this blue color in this plot is the monthly sunspot number. So we can see that the mass loss via CME is also maximum when there are more number of sunspots. But since the sunspots are only in the range of minus 30 to plus 30 degree latitude, and when we have considered all the CME from the sun, even from higher latitude, the mass loss increases. It means that there are other structures. There are a few CME from higher latitude which are not associated with the sunspots region. So we try to find an association, and we find that the rate of mass loss from the sun, dm by dt via CME, can be associated with the sunspots number via some formula, as shown here as equation 1. Then we try to also calculate this mass loss in terms of solar X-ray luminosity, and the total solar X-ray luminosity, we can calculate it from there are instruments like gauge, and we can calculate the total X-ray flux coming from the sun, and we can remove the flux coming due to the solar flare, which is the sudden enhancement for a very short time. So we did this, and we found that the mass loss from the CME can also be associated very with the solar luminosity. Then we also calculated the mass loss from the solar wind. As I described before, that mass loss can also happen via solar wind. So in this, we can again associate the solar mass loss via solar wind and associated with the sunspot number and X-ray luminosity. So what we found that, so we calculated the total mass loss from the sun. So if we see that CME and solar wind mass loss is just 1.5 million tons per second, while the nuclear fusion, so the idea of this analysis was to understand how much mass loss happens in the different processes. So as we have calculated that nuclear fusion itself alone can cause 5 million tons of mass loss per second, while considering the CME and solar wind, the mass loss from the sun is only 1.5 million tons per second. So the idea to study the mass loss is, since the gravity of the sun have held all the planets which are revolving around it. From the Kepler law, we can calculate the orbiting radius of planets and then time period. So if the sun loses its mass, the planet's orbit can drift. And from the simple calculation, we found that the solar mass of around 5.5 million tons per second, including CME, solar wind, and nuclear, can cause the Earth to drift around 1.6 centimeter per year. So this is too small. However, the sun, but the assumption here is the sun is losing mass with the same rate. We know that the sun, when it was born, had different luminosity, and as it progresses during its life, it may have different mass loss processes. So it is important to study the mass loss and to calculate how the star evolves, how the planet evolves. So, but this mass loss seems to have no effect, but this is not the complete story of mass loss. There are much adverse effects of mass loss via CME and solar wind on Earth's magnetosphere. To see if a CME, which is a huge magnetized plasma from the sun coming towards Earth, if this CME comes to Earth, it can disturb the Earth's magnetosphere. We know that on the surface of Earth, there is some magnetic field in magnitude. So around here is one example we can see around March 1989. We can see here the storm can cause this CMH index. CMH index is the horizontal component of Earth's magnetic field. So if we can see, once a CME arrives to the Earth, there is a disturbances in the horizontal component of Earth's magnetic field, and the Earth's magnetic field can decrease, and it can decrease up to even minus 800 or more nanotesla. So what we see that if such CME is headed towards the Earth, it can disturb the Earth's magnetosphere. and therefore there is a sun earth connection. And in this context, it is very important to understand how the CME from the sun can affect our earth. If we see here this video, we can it helps to visualize how this earth's magnetosphere, which is the magnetic field generated due to the dynamo at the earth core, and when the magnetized CME plasma reaches to earth, it breaks the day side magnetosphere magnetic field lines, and then we can see that most of the energy from the solar wind or CME enters through the pole region of the earth, and in the night side here we can see that the magnetic field lines are again getting reconnected and the energy is being transferred in the polar region of the earth. Such transfer of energy from the solar wind or CME to the earth's polar region is often seen in the form of aurora, which is a colored bright light. If we see here, this colored light is due to the ionization of atmospheric molecules due to photoionization or solar wind hitting to these particles of the Earth's atmosphere. One extreme case is that to give an example, around March 1989, there was a huge CME from the sun, and when it arrived to Earth, it caused the electric power loss in Quebec for around 9 hours. So there are adverse effects of CME, which is the sudden expulsion of huge magnetized plasma from the sun. And such plasma, once reached to Earth, it can disturb technology. So it is very important to study the CME in this context, which is one process of mass loss, but it doesn't affect the sun as much, but it affects the Earth system. If the CMEs are very fast enough, they can drive a shock in front of it, as we can see the central panel of the figure. And such shock can accelerate the particles in our in the heliosphere, solar wind, and we can see that some particles can be accelerated at the energy level of mega electron volt. And such particles, once reaches to space, they can disrupt the space technology. So here I would summarize the 3 types of space weather events. The solar flare, which sends the X-ray flux from the sun, can modify the ionosphere. They can ionize our Earth's ionosphere, which can disrupt the radio communication, and it can affect the various airline communication and satellite communication. Then we have solar flare and CMEs. The CMEs can accelerate energetic particles, which can again come to our Earth and disrupt the high frequency radio communication. Then we have CMEs, which can come to Earth's magnetosphere and can create perturbations, and even on the surface of Earth, the magnitude of magnetic field measured would change, and such change would cause various changes in the technology, power grid, and they can lead to failure of power grids. So it means that the mass loss from the sun is very important, and especially the episodic mass loss process, which is the coronal mass ejection. And here is a cartoon showing the sun is the main driver of space weather. When I say space weather, it refers to change in the outer space in the environment, which can lead to disruption of various space technology and ground-based technology, and then indirectly affects the human life because as we are progressing in the technological era, our dependence on the technology is increasing. So any storms from the sun can affect our GPS signal, and then they can lead to induced current in our power systems or the submarine cables. So we can see that there are various effects and which need to be understood properly, and sun is the main driver. So studying the sun, which is one branch of astrophysics like solar astrophysics, we can connect our space environment and we can better understand the sun earth connection. Once we understand the sun earth connection, it would help to understand other exoplanets and their environment, whether the life can exist at that planets, the habitability of other planets. If some stars host some planet around it, and if the star leads to more CME, we can know whether the atmosphere of that planet would survive over a time. So we can understand various processes of planetary system if we understand the sun-earth connection. So to summarize why we need to study CME, basically the propagation of CME, which is the propagation of mass from the sun to earth. So from science point of view, as I described before, that the region between the sun and earth has been filled with a solar wind, which is a continuous evaporation of ionized particles from the sun. And once the CME is launched from the sun, it propagates in a solar wind medium. So studying the propagation of CME into solar wind, we can better understand how this two magnetized system interacts and evolve. From the application point of view, as I described, that CMEs are responsible for severe space weather effects on Earth and other planets. So prediction of arrival time of CMEs at the Earth is very important. Considering this importance of CMEs, different missions has been launched. We see here the series of missions from NASA and ESA has been launched since 1971 to understand the CME. When the CMEs are seen properly in white light images, they normally have this three-part structure. We have the frontal loop, then we have the cavity which is less bright but more magnetic, it has a more magnetic field, and then we have a bright core. Such CMEs are seen in white light due to the Thomson scattering, in which the photospheric light from the sun gets scattered by the electrons of the CMEs. Then we have another way to observe such CMEs, and that is called interplanetary scintillation. Any plasma irregularities coming from the sun, coming in the sun-earth line, and then we observe other radio sources. Here we can see the radio sources. So once this interplanetary disturbance, which is CME, comes in the way of in the line of sight of those radio source and Earth, this solar wind irregularity can cause the phase scintillation, and that lead to constructive and destructive interference and resulting amplitude variations received at the Earth, and we can study its propagation. Then another way of observing CME is the in situ observation. If we have an instrument near the Earth, and once the CME arrives near the Earth, different properties like magnetic field density, temperature, and the magnetic field orientation can be studied. So if we see here that CME, when is observed near the sun, it has different structure, like the front have more plasma density, core have different density. But if we observe the in situ, it is very difficult to find an association between what we observe near the sun and what we observe near the Earth. To make an association between the properties of CME observed near the sun and observed near the Earth, we need to continuously follow it. However, so different properties of the CME can be studied even using the in situ observations. And we can see here, once the CME has arrived, we can see a geomagnetic storm, the horizontal component of Earth's magnetic field, which is shown at the bottom panel of the right figure. We can see that it decreases and then it recovers over a day to its normal value. So we can see that the mass loss from the sun in the form of CME have the potential to disrupt Earth's magnetic field. And such mass loss so let us go to next slide. And when this CME arrives to the Earth's magnetosphere, it leads to various current system in the Earth's magnetic field. We can see that some of the particles from the solar wind, when reaches to Earth, they can form ring current, they can move around the equatorial region of the Earth's magnetic field. Then we can have field aligned current, as we can see in the figure. Then we can have neutral sheet current in the night side of the magnetosphere. These all current system lead to other disturbances in the Earth's magnetosphere, and this all must be considered to examine the effect of CME on the Earth. So most of the study on the CME propagation were can be divided into the two era. One is like before 2007 and one is after 2007. This is because in 2007 NASA launched another mission which was very revolutionary called Stereo mission. Before that, the observations were limited. Most of the observation of CME was from the L1 point from the SOHO LASCO, which can observe the CME only up to 30 solar radii in the coronagraphic field of view. And then we had another set of observations called in situ observations very close to the Earth. But it was not understood properly how the CME propagates between the Sun and Earth. And moreover, when we observe the CME only near the Sun from the Earth viewpoint, all the parameters of the CME were plane of sky projected. And then the speed or the mass calculation or the direction of the CME, we had very little information of them. However, using those data sets, it has been studied that CME propagates with different speed. Near the Sun, it has slow rise, and then it passes through an impulsive phase, and then it has a constant speed, almost constant speed. But if we track a CME from near the Sun to near the Earth, we can see that different CME have different speed. Here we can see that. And some CME have a speed which is decreasing as it propagates from the Sun to Earth. We can see that Earth's orbit is here. Earth is around 215 solar radii away from the Sun. So and the x-axis is the logarithmic axis. It is shown in the log axis, log scale. So we can see that some CME have the speeds increasing during its journey, while some CME have speeds increasing. So what causes this? To understand this, we need to properly understand the propagation of CME and what are the various forces acting on the CME. And once the CME arrives, they lead to space weather. So it is very important to predict space weather, and the prediction would involve, once the CME arrive at the Earth, how much disturbance it can cause to Earth's magnetic field. That is called geomagnetic storm. So the magnitude of geomagnetic storm must be predicted well. And for this purpose, we need to identify the various solar sources of the CME, and then how it propagates, and then the relation between interplanetary parameter of the CME and the solar parameters. So we can see that to predict any space weather near the Earth, we need to do many things, and a lot of challenges still remaining. However, in 2007, NASA had launched another mission called Stereo mission. It had two spacecraft, Stereo A and Stereo B. Both were moving in the Earth's orbit. Stereo A was leading the Earth, while the Stereo B is trailing the Earth. And what we can see here that the field of view of these instruments, Core 1, Core 2, HI1 and HI2, this 4 imager on this stereo can cover a CME from the Sun as it is launched near the Sun in the corona, and then here we can see the Earth. So we can see that this mission was able to track a CME from near the Sun to near the Earth, and then using these observations, one can study the propagation of CME and any associated geomagnetic perturbation at the surface of Earth can be well associated with the structure arriving at the Earth. We can see here the different instrument, and we can see that CME are well and can be continuously tracked from the sun to Earth. After the launch of stereo mission, we had there was several people developed many techniques to understand the kinematics of the CME. In some of the methods, single spacecraft observation from stereo A was used, while some of the techniques called stereoscopic techniques were developed, which used the observations from both viewpoints. One such technique is called geometric triangulation technique, which we used in our one study, and we can see here that the CME we can track the CME up to 150 solar radii, and then we can calculate the speed of the CME. In this figure, we can see here that speed as the CME is coming out from the sun, its speed first rises, then slowly decreases, and then almost becomes constant. But most of the time, as I described before, that even using stereo observations, it is possible that some of the CME cannot be tracked for a long time. And then in such situations, we can use the drag model. Drag model basically study the interaction of CMEs with the solar wind. As I described before, that the space between sun and earth is filled with solar wind medium, which is magnetized medium. And if a CME of different speed is launched into solar wind, pervading solar wind, so there would be an interaction between CME and solar wind velocity. And then there would be drag force acting on the CME. And if we know the density of CME, its structure, how large it is, and what is the mass of the CME, one can calculate how CME propagates due to under the drag force. Then there are some studies which have simulated the solar wind medium and then launched the CME as a flux rope into this medium. And they have studied how the CME would evolve, how it will form a soft structure, and how they will propagate. To simulate a solar wind background medium, again we need information on the solar surface, like in the disk, corona, chromosphere. What are the structures there? What are the magnetic fields there? Using those as inputs, we can simulate the solar wind medium, and then we can launch a CME, a test CME, and then we can study how it propagates. Here we can see that one such simulation, CME here is shown with propagating here, and these are the Parker spirals with these dotted black lines. So we can see that CME with different intensity, the scale is shown at the bottom of this. So we can see that it is possible to simulate a CME and model solar wind, and then we can predict the arrival. Such simulation of CME into the solar wind can then can be compared with the observations. So in the past, there are several efforts which have combined the observations and models to study how CME propagates between the sun and earth, and when they arrive at the earth, how they lead to geomagnetic perturbations. Studying the CME, if there are two CMEs from the sun, that is called successive CMEs, and if the following CME is faster than the preceding CME, it is also possible that the both CME may collide, and such collision can lead to change in the kinematics of the CME. Like here, on 14th and 15th February 2011, there were two CMEs, one on 14th February and one on the 15th February. And we can see in the figure, we studied this event into much detail. And what we found that the CME of 15th February have speed almost twice the speed of preceding CME of 14th February. And they both had the same direction. So the following CME could catch the preceding CME. And if we see the plot of kinematics in the right panel of this figure, we can see that as the two CME are in close contact, the kinematics of the CME is changing. The slow CME, which was the preceding CME, gets accelerated, while the following CME, which was the faster one, gets decelerated. So we found that there is a momentum exchange between the collision of CMEs. So we tried to understand the momentum exchange between the CMEs, and for this purpose, we took several cases of the CMEs. And what we found that like several case events shown here from like one is of February 2011, then we have in June, May, and then in September of the 11, 2013. So in this, we took several cases of the CME and we tried to understand if the two CME collides, so whether this collision can be classified as a super elastic collision or elastic collision or inelastic collision. So when we say elastic collision, it means that we all know that kinetic energy of the colliding particles in the post-collision phase is equal to the pre-collision phase. But if the nature of collision is inelastic, it means that the total kinetic energy of the system, colliding system, in the post-collision phase is less than the total kinetic energy in the pre-collision phase. However, when I say super elastic, it implies that total kinetic energy of the colliding system in the post-collision phase is larger than the pre-collision phase. So we try to establish that we can, and this nature of collision can be measured in terms of coefficient of restitution E. So we can see that some of the CME collision leads to E value at 0, while some is more than the 1, and while some are very close to 1, are almost 1. So we can see that some CMEs show the nature of collision as elastic, while some are inelastic, and some are super elastic. To find the physics behind it, we looked at various parameters of the colliding CMEs, and we see that in the right panel of the figure, collision duration. If the two CMEs have larger collision duration, they are in close contact for a long time, then the coefficient of restitution is increasing. While the middle panel of the right side figure suggests that if a following CME have expansion speed larger than the previous CME, preceding CME, which is CME1, then again coefficient of restitution increases. And in the bottom panel, we can see that the approaching speed of the colliding CMEs, if it is decreases, the coefficient of restitution increases. So we can see that the expansion of CME, which is expanding, CME is basically expanding plasma blob. So we can see that if it is expanding faster, if the following CME is expanding faster and approaching slower the preceding CME, the coefficient of restitution becomes large and it favors for a superelastic collision. So when this interacting CME arrives at the Earth, we can see here that we have shown here various in situ plasma properties of CMEs and also the geomagnetic perturbation in the right panel. So what we see that when the interacting CMEs arrive at the Earth, in between the CME1 and CME2, there forms an interaction region, and this interaction region has very high temperature, like we can see here the two peaks, and that corresponds to dip in the magnetic field. And at the same time, we have very high plasma beta. So we can see that when this CME, the interaction region between the CME1 and CME2 arrives at the Earth, they lead to perturbation in the Earth's magnetic field, which is measured in different index. If we see here the CMH index, from the top, if we see here that we have plotted the equatorial electric field, which is very much fluctuating in the interaction region. Then we have a PC index, which measures the ionospheric electric field over polar region. We can see that it again rises. Then we have the CMH index, and we can see that when the interaction region of CME1 and CME2 arrives, they cause depression or the decrease in the Earth's magnetic field. And then we have the AL index at the bottom panel. What we see that as this CME arrives, the interaction region have lead to various fluctuations, and this AL index basically measures the auroral electrojet. So we can see that interaction region between the CME1 and CME2 is very important. So what we see in general that CMEs, which are the mass loss, one process of mass loss, once reaches to Earth, it can lead to various perturbations in the Earth's magnetic field. So to know the perturbations well in advance, what we know is first we need to study the sun in detail. So we need to know different flare process, proton events, and CME occurrence on the sun. For this, we need to continuously monitor the sun. Then we need to understand how this energetic events from the sun travels from the sun to Earth. Since the CME is a magnetized structure and the southward component of magnetic field in the CME leads to geomagnetic star, we need to know how the magnetic field orientation changes in the CME as the CME propagates. So we need to predict the magnetic field structure arriving at the Earth. And once they arrive at the Earth, we need to know the preconditioning of the magnetosphere before the CME arrives. So to understand the Sun-Earth system, we need to continuously monitor the mass loss via CME and their arrival at the Earth. Further, from the physics point of view, as I shown that the interaction of CME have led to change in the temperature of the CME and plasma beta expansion speed. So to understand how a single CME evolves and when it evolves, how their internal state can change. So in thermodynamics, the internal state can also be understood in terms of polytropic index. And for this purpose, we had made a model called flux rope internal state model. And we studied the CME using the Frisch model called flux rope internal state model, which can calculate the different parameters like the Lorentz force acting on the CME and then thermal pressure force, heating rate. When the CME evolves from the sun, it is important to calculate how it cools because it is expanding. So if we know the cooling rate of the CME, we can know how the plasma inside interacts or what are the plasma processes in the CME. So we actually studied two cases of the CME and we found that the polytropic index in one case in the left side, which is the CME occurred on 12 December 2008, and we found that the polytropic index was decreasing. It means that if the polytropic index is greater than 1.66, it means that in the beginning it is releasing heat, while once it crosses the adiabatic state, it absorbs the heat. While for the another case of 3 April 2010 CME, which was a fast CME, the polytropic index was almost constant. So it means that different CME have different thermodynamic evolution, and we need to understand what are the processes which can cause CME to evolve thermodynamically in a different way. So as I described before, that sun has two mass loss process due to solar activity. One is the solar wind and one is the CME. The solar wind is the acceleration and heating of solar wind not much understood because there are very less observation of solar wind close to the sun. And then there is another mission called Solar Orbiter, which has been launched very recently, and the Max Planck Institute is a partner in this project. So this we can see that the white orbit is the solar orbiter orbit, and we can see that it is going much closer to the sun. So it means that it would explore the region which has not been explored before, and any solar wind coming from the sun can be studied well in detail even near the sun where it originates. This is the orbit of solar orbiter and latitudes. We can see that they are slightly beyond the ecliptic and going much closer to the sun as the time progresses. Like up to, and the mission, if we see on the x-axis around 2030, it is reaching up to 0. Much closer to the sun. Then we have another mission launched by NASA called Parker Solar Probe. It has an instrument called Whisper, and it can very nicely can track any solar wind mass losses or CME mass loss from the sun. We can see here. So we are in the era where any particles coming from the sun can be tracked during its evolution from the sun to earth. And such observations would help to understand the nature of particles, their heating, their acceleration, their density, how they evolve, and once they arrive to the earth, their effects can be studied in much detail in the context of information we have during their evolution from sun to earth. If we see jointly the Solar Orbiter and Parker Solar Probe, we can see the orbits of different planets and then the spacecraft Solar Orbiter and Parker Solar Probe. So we can see that we are exploring the inner heliosphere, the region very close to the sun, and which was not explored at least in situ in the by the previous several missions. So it means that we would have the in situ measurements of CME and solar wind close to the sun, and which would help us to understand how CME or solar wind evolves from sun to earth. Then India is also ready, almost ready with its first solar mission called Aditya, and we can see here that this instrument also have various science capability and different payloads like visible emission line coronagraph VELC instrument can observe the corona, and we can observe the CME close to the sun. Then we have another instrument called SOOT, Aspects, PAPA, Papa, Solex, Helios. So we can see that different payloads and the lead institutions are they are leading these projects. So India would also have its one solar mission, and using these observations in collaboration with other missions like Solar Orbiter and Parker Solar Probe, as I described before, we can better understand the science, the mass loss from the sun, CMEs, how they affect, how they are born, and how they arrive to the Earth and lead to space weather events. So from this talk, if we want to take the take-home message, we are unique to have perfect location of the sun and earth, because if earth is much closer, the life may not sustain, and if it is much farther, again the life may not sustain. So this unique location allows us to explore the sun, and by exploring the sun, studying it into detail from the astrophysical perspective, we can understand other stars and exoplanets in detail. Then sun sustains life on earth, but the mass loss via extreme solar activity like CMEs and also solar wind can disrupt space and ground-based technological system, which can affect our life badly. So it is very important to understand how CMEs are launched from the sun, what are the processes to launch the CME, and how they propagate from sun to earth, and once they arrive to the earth, what are the processes in the earth's magnetosphere which can lead to various perturbations on the power grids and the technology on the ground. Then examining the kinematics and thermodynamic evolution of CME over a long time are very important to understand space weather and space climate situation. And as I shown that we have different missions which are very revolutionary, like Solar Orbiter and Parker Solar Probe. In addition to Indian mission called Aditya, we would have multi-wavelength high-resolution observation of the sun and its corona. This would help us to understand the sun in much detail. We can measure the solar wind and in situ at much closer distance from the Solar Orbiter and Parker Solar Probe. So this would also help to study the solar wind into much detail, which has not been done in the many previous study. So I thank you to every audience for listening this talk, and I welcome the questions, and I leave with this quote. Thank you so much.
Hello, sir. Can you hear?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir, for your most interactive and informative sessions. And we very much appreciate your effort to visualize the sun from the earth and its properties. There are some questions from the audience. So, one question, let's go through very quickly. One question from the Zubair Sheikh. The question is, what is the cause of differential motion? That is the question from this Zubair Sheikh.
Okay, so I would say that since sun is in the plasma state, not like the solid Earth, so this causes the differential rotation in the sun.
Okay, and second one is this Jignesh Chariwala that he want to ask when sunspots are visible, maybe tragedy happens in nearby years. So is it true about it? So that is the question about that corona, I think. Corona
Actually,
flares.
there is no scientific study that more number of sunspots have lead to any casualty on the Earth. However, the solar irradiance, the total radiation which comes to Earth, changes when there are more number of sunspots on the sun because they are darker. So, in that context, the solar flux arriving to the Earth would change, but that would not cause much variations. However, if there are no sunspots for a long time on the sun, the effects can be seen, like we have seen in the Maunder minimum when for many decades we had no sunspots.
Okay. So that is the that you have mentioned in your presentation. There is a one event in that there is a 9 hours of electricity fail due to that winds.
Yeah, solar image.
Yeah. So there is a last, maybe there is a question by Ganesh Mishra. Is this field, basically your working field, is highly a mathematical? I think so.
I think it would involve lot of mathematics to simulate the ambient medium. So theoretical aspects would involve lot of mathematics. However, in observation, if we deal with there is less mathematics, but still we cannot avoid it. So I would say this.
Yes, I will like to comment that in our basically undergraduate study, not exactly the astrophysics is there, but one subject is astronomy and astrophysics. But in parallel to that, what is the requirement? One is nuclear science. There is a one subject of nuclear physics, and second one is some numerical methods which are used to analyze that data. So mathematical physics is there, atomic physics is there. So by combining those subjects, we can go to the one particular conclusion, one particular subject, to know the deep about that.
Yeah, so I think the plasma physics and thermodynamics is also very important to study the astrophysics,
Yes, plasma physics and
thermodynamics.
thermodynamics is also there, because there is a lot of study on the temperature based, light and temperature basically.
Okay, that's good.
Does the change happen in human body or a bird when sunspots maxima? Oh, so there is a one
Yeah,
question from the.
so I cannot comment on this. However, if one can look the long-term patterns and find some correlation, but that need to be approved by science methods and processes.
Okay. So for there is no question from these odd ones, and let us wind up this uh, wonderful session. So at last, I would like to thank Dr. Vagesh Mishra for deliver a wonderful talk about these sun. There is a lot of things, a lot of facts that we don't know about that particular mass and its loss basically. So thank for knowing for these facts. I am very much thankful to the UCA Tarsadi University, the provost, Dr. D.R. Shah, and the registrar and head of the Department of Physics, Dr. Shri Mishra, and all the faculty members and my dear students. They are actually attending these webinars. And they are waiting for this kind of the interesting topic for a last many times to discuss and on this particular platform. So thank you, Dr. Vagesh Mishra, sir.
And thank you for moderating this session and giving me this opportunity to present my talk. And I am very much happy to be with you all. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, sir. We'll
Thank you.
meet you again.